What?
Hey guys, what I've got here today is one very special airsoft gun. This is the WA2000, specifically the second version that came out around 2020. To those of you who aren't familiar, this thing probably looks like a giant brick with a trigger. This isn't my WA2000 replica, but it was offered to me to make a little video with. So hey, let's do this. The WA2000 replica is an iconic piece of airsoft memorabilia, you could say. I'd make an educated guess and say 90% of the people who own a WA2000 replica are probably using them as showpieces rather than actually playing with them out on an airsoft field. The WA2000 is beloved not just for its extremely unique and retro-y appearance, but also for its appearances in dozens of video games and several films such as James Bond in the Living Daylights, The Bourne Identity, Equilibrium, and Hitman. The WA2000 is, by definition, a sniper rifle, and is probably meant to be used as a stationary piece, not so much a run-and gunner. Although I will say, for those of you thinking about being mobile with something like this, imagine running around with a sledgehammer and feeling all that inertia whenever you're turning or stopping. Yeah, that was pretty much me during the entire intro to this video. After about 2 hours of filming, I was pretty dead. This replica weighs about 13 pounds on its own, but a lot of that weight is in the middle, so you really got to get used to that sort of feeling. I'm also not going to dive into disassembly, internals, or price of this replica, simply because YouTube doesn't like that sort of content and will probably demonetize this video, even though it's just a toy. A really big, heavy toy. I'm simply just showing you guys all the little edges and talking about the unique external design of this behemoth. Speaking of design, I think the reason so many people fall in love with the WA2000 is because of the perfect blend of wood and metal. The handguard alone is just a beautiful, smooth, dark walnut with a textured grip all across the bottom from front to back. Literally. Gonna be a weird comparison here, but it kinda looks like the inside of an Aero bar, if you guys know what I mean. It just has this really satisfying texture and makes me hungry for chocolate. Moving on to the bipod, it can slide back and forth along this top piece it sits on, but it looks best in front, let's be honest. There's also these little buttons that fold or open the bipod's legs, which, might I add, are pretty difficult to operate when you're wearing gloves.
What am I doing wrong here?
The bipod clamp sits just behind and canted off-center from the 5.5 inches of rail space available. This is another reason why someone like myself would struggle to even consider recording airsoft gameplay with this thing. I don't even know where to begin when it comes to mounting cameras and batteries, not to mention the extra weight that would add. The outer barrel is fluted and definitely a solid choice in style. It really pops and lets you know where the business end of this thing is. I feel like a plain, smooth outer barrel design would have been a turnoff for a lot of people here. This replica also has a mock suppressor in the front, although the end of the inner barrel actually sits about an inch from the tip, so it doesn't really offer much else other than being a mock suppressor. One of my favorite features here on this replica is the safety. I know, kind of weird, but it's literally just this flat, horizontal switch that has this really beefy click. Give it a listen. Wonderful. Simple design and very blocky, just like the rest of this beauty. Of course, what's a safety without its trigger? Not much to say here, but I will say for such a big boy, this trigger only needs a gentle squeeze. It really doesn't take much finger pressure here, which isn't what I was expecting when I first fired this thing out on the field. There's really not a lot of moving parts on this thing. It's really just a simple, heavy rectangle. That is rectangle because it wrecks your wallet, but not your heart. The bolt system, or the means of charging the spring, is also incredibly simple. You literally just pull this bulky knob back and then forward to charge the spring. You do this per shot, and believe me, it's a workout after holding this thing for about 5 minutes. However, gotta give props to the sturdiness of all the movable parts here. Nothing feels loose or janky. The bolt is really firm, everything is smooth, and it really helps when I'm already too occupied dealing with the massive size and weight of this thing. Not having to worry about a stiff bolt or trigger really helps. Not that I would expect many of you to be fielding this thing. In case you're wondering, there's actually no magazine for this gun. Up to 50 BBs are stored in the front and are actually pushed up into place with a brass rod with a spring inside of it. And yes, it looks an awful lot like an inner barrel. Well, that's really all I wanted to show you guys here on my glass desk, which is holding this behemoth surprisingly well. The WA2000 Airsoft replica is pretty wicked. As I said, this is totally a showpiece, a wall hanger. If you rock this out on the field, hey, good on you. Your arms are probably huge. Now, if you don't mind, I think it's time for me to return this thing to its rightful owner. It's starting to take up a lot of space, and it's also starting to scare all my other little tiny airsoft guns. Take care, guys. I had a lot of fun showcasing this guy for you. See you next time.